Dan just put a video up on the Hunting Beast yesterday. Little scouting video, essentially, Dan. And you kind of had an idea during the video about monitoring some bedding areas with a number of cameras. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about this evening with everybody, and probably just trail cam strategies in general for the season. And we thought we'd start by talking about this experiment Dan's going to do this year with a bunch of Exodus trail cameras.
I was kind of looking at I've got a unique situation in the swamp territory here where a lot of the bedding areas are set up in a way where there's one exit. So if the buck's there, he's coming out a certain way. If he's there, he's coming down a certain trail. And if that's the case, if you monitor that with a cell cam, you're going to watch him every time he comes through that gap. So I was just thinking it'd be a great opportunity to get some stats, and really see how things go, and we talk about overlooked spots, see how many times actually other hunters go into those spots. There's a whole host of things we can look at. How consistent your bed, how it impacts them when you go in there and you hunt, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting because there's not so much in the last 6 months have I heard it, but probably last year, maybe the year before that, when cell cameras were really becoming the new norm, becoming really popular, hitting critical mass. Mm-hmm. Guys that were running cameras on bait, there was a claim where people felt like cell cameras spooked deer because of the RF. And I think this would be a good study to show whether it does or it doesn't. In my opinion, it doesn't. I have an explanation for that. But I think being a part of this study, I think that there'll be some good usable data even around that sense on
that's why it's kind of, if possible, I'd like to have either you or Cameron come out and help with that, because you got your expertise in your cameras and you can help with the setups and stuff, and make sure that we're doing it in a certain way. And we can monitor that too, and talk about that on video. I think this whole thing's going to be a really great learning experience.
So, Dan, how many cameras are you thinking about running during the year? However many Chad will bring up to you.
Maybe 6 or 7. I don't know.
And they're all going to be cell cameras?
Yeah, that would be the ticket. If it wasn't a cell cam, I'd have to leave it there for the whole year and not check it.
Right.
I'm not going to go back into those bedding area. I learned long ago that putting them right in bedding areas, which is what a lot of guys want to do. They want to put right over the beds. Deer just freak out about that. If you're just 75 yards back, you're still getting the picture of the deer. And if the deer bed's a little different one day, because generally they got a bunch of beds, you don't miss the footage, and stuff like that. On that exit, he's coming out. So I want to monitor the exits about 75 yards from the beds. And there's only certain bedding areas that'll work on. So, ones that got one good exit coming out, and usually ones that are backed up against something, near a road, near a river, that kind of stuff, or going down into cattails, they're coming up a point out. And then it's got to be ones that I know big bucks use. So it's going to be kind of interesting, see how many different bucks use that bedding area in a year, how consistent it is. That I talk about how in the past I've noticed 2-week time periods when they're really peak on bedding areas. See how consistent that is, because the cameras aren't going to lie; they're going to tell the truth. And see if we see different results in different bedding areas. Which I'm sure we will.
Yeah. It'll also be interesting if you could prolong it to run the exact same cameras next year. Mm-hmm. As long as they're fruitful areas, and just to see how maybe crop rotation in a certain area may have changed something, or if you had a good acorn crop, or I don't know, just things like that would be interesting to note and see how that kind of stuff plays out. Also, we talked about this a little bit too, is be interesting to see what kind of pressure each camera gets as far as human pressure.
Mm-hmm. Right. We talk about how, these are overlooked spots. Mm-hmm. Now, what is an overlooked spot? How many times do humans get in there? You know, we know occasionally people get into every spot in the woods, but it'll be kind of interesting. I know, you know, I ran a cell cam on a spot last year, and I had one hunter come in once, you know, and I was actually kind of surprised about that in that spot. But that'll be interesting too. You know, it is, you know, coyotes might come through. And
Yeah.
you can see what the impact of that is. Maybe they don't have as much impact as humans because they're always coming through. Maybe they do. You know, it's going to be interesting.
You know, there was an audible noise study done in Georgia last year, and the NDA released some of that. And we actually had this guy on our podcast, but the study was around noises from predators. So wolves, which aren't in Georgia, coyotes, humans, and I think there might have been, maybe it was a bobcat. Maybe the bobcat was the last one. And they had a bunch of different test sites. And the biggest negative impact on deer movement between all of those predators, and this was just purely audible. So it's just basically they had a camera there, and then they had some type of audio file, like playback at specific
like a
time.
predator call or something. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And the human voice had a bigger impact on every one of those test sites over coyotes or wolves or bobcats. Just really interesting.
I believe that.
Yeah, for sure.
You got any?
Go ahead, Dan. No, I was gonna say, I don't know the numbers of deer that like coyotes and bobcats kill around here, but I can't imagine it's as many as hunters kill.
I've seen them hunt, you know, not bobcats. We don't have much for bobcats around here, but I've seen coyotes hunt deer quite a few times. When I'm in the field, I've seen them circling deer, going after them, and I think they can be pretty consistent at that. However, I think the freaking coyotes find them no matter where they go.
Right.
I think that, you know, humans don't. So they can avoid the humans. I don't think they can avoid the coyotes as much. I think maybe they're used to them.
Yeah. I mean, they live with them, essentially, you know. At least they get a break from us for, you know, 70% of the year. Some states less than that. But, yeah, I was, we were, before the podcast, we were sitting here just talking about life right now and how deer season's sneaking up on us. And I was thinking about going to Tennessee in that velvet season. And that's like a few weeks from now, or, you know, about a month from now, I guess. But I still got a whole bunch of stuff to do around here still. I got cameras I got to get out and everything else. I'm going to try to find a few places kind of like Dan's describing too, and compile that data maybe in hill country. I put out 2 cameras this weekend in hill country. They weren't cell cameras because I don't have cell service where I was at, but I'd like to include that in the data for sure. Just some like buck bedding points that go down into a hub and out to a crop field eventually. And, you know, found a couple nice scrapes down in there and put them over those scrapes. Dan, are you going to specifically like try to find scrapes outside of bedding or just intersecting trails, or is there any particular like way you're going to set up the cameras?
No, actually, finding those 2 spots with scrapes in that video was pretty rare.
Yeah.
You know? Finding scrape beds is not an easy task. So no, I'm not going to target that. I am going to have cameras at those 2 spots, but most of the time I'm just going to be looking for bedding that I believe, for whatever reason, be it sign or past history, that I know mature bucks are bedding there, or at least occasionally do, right? So that's what I'm going to target. And those 2 with the scrapes are kind of unique. You don't see that a lot. I've just had a lot of success when I have found that situation.
Yeah, for sure. James W. in the comments said I bet cars kill more deer than coyotes. Did they have like a horn beeping at them?
I don't think so, but that would have been funny.
I think coyotes kill a lot of fawns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They also kill deer in deep snow, and then they get a lot of the mature bucks that are run down from the rut.
There was a Man, there was a trail camera. Chad, you probably have seen this. There was somebody put a trail camera over like a den for coyotes, and they counted like how many fawns they drug into that
Oh, really?
den. Yeah, and it was like a number that you never guessed had been that high, and it was just a astronomical amount of fawns that the female was pulling into her pups.
Wow.
Yeah,
You know,
I'll try to find it.
Yeah, you'll send that to me.
for a while, there was a period of about 5-6 years where we never saw fawn on Dave's property.
Yeah,
All the does would be fawnless because there's so many coyotes.
yeah, they're hard on the fawns,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of coyotes anymore.
You have less and less people trapping, less and less people hunting them.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah,
outside, like where we are, outside of a couple big week-long coyote contests, like there ain't very many people hunting them. And there's
those things are going to be a thing in the past eventually too. Like people get all kinds of upset about those.
Yep.
My dad and my uncles they run coyote dogs, but they not like they used to. They don't do it as much as they used to anymore. And they've always done it after deer season, and they're a group of
picking up around here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's starting to get to be the in thing with people. A lot of people are starting to call them, use infrared by those high dollar scopes, and a lot of guys are running hounds.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta go grab a charger real quick. My laptop's dying here. I gotta
Go for it.
Rookie mistake, but I'll be back in 1 minute.
No problem. Yeah. I looked into because we got down in the farm that I have, we got coyotes bad down there. And I looked into getting one of those like scopes, those infrared night scopes, and yeah, I don't know. Got a lot of money. Oh, a lot of money wrapped up into that stuff. I want to say they're like $5,000 or something like that. Maybe it wasn't that much, but it seemed like it was close. It was enough to where I was like, no, not even going to think about it.
We almost had an exciting show tonight because we had a great escape of Carol had some feral cats in the house here in a room, and they busted a window out. They busted out the screen and escaped, and we're trying to catch them, and she locked one of them in this room, and it kept trying to attack me like it was a mountain lion or something. And I thought I was going to have to spend some time in here with it, but she finally got it out of here.
That's funny. It broke. Did it break just the screen? It didn't break glass, did it?
No, she's got like one of those old fashioned accordion screens in there.
Oh yeah.
So I was tackling cats just before the podcast.
So, what would you say, Dan? Like, I don't know if there's 5 or 6 things. Like, what all are you going to look at whenever whether it be moon or temperature, whatever? What all are you thinking about?
I'm going to try and look at everything I can. Anything that I can correlate a pattern on. And I'm sure I'm going to think of more stuff along the way, but we talked about a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to predict when I think the bedding areas are going to peak, based on what like I always talk about being the detective and going into these bedding areas, and, when you scout them and figuring out when you think deer are going to be there rather than just hunting them randomly. Right. So make some predictions about what's going to happen, and then see if I'm right or if I'm wrong on camera, and learn from the experience. Right. So that kind of stuff. But there's a million things we can monitor.
Yeah.
And I think as the data comes in, we can start trying to, correlate that to things that went on. Would be how early they move on moon phases or something. If we get enough data, we can do that. There ain't a lot of big bucks around here, but I'm assuming we're going to get enough data to check some of that stuff. I'd also like to see, the difference between mature bucks and younger bucks, how they come out and stuff, based on amount of daylight, things like that.
I think the moon phase and transit times, so overhead underfoot, I think that would be really interesting to monitor.
Right.
I know that there's guys that believe in it and there's guys that don't believe in it. And I want to believe in it because I think from what a lot of guys say, it gives you or can give you an advantage. And I just personally haven't seen any correlation, or even all of us here at the office, like going through data. But that doesn't mean it's not, because we're not running cameras in a manner for us to really be able to decipher that either. Where, if we're 75 yards from a bedding area with one exit, I think that data is probably a lot more accurate than having cameras scattered all over the big woods.
Correct. I have seen some correlation with moon phase, with the overhead underfoot thing. However, I've seen it very dramatically, at least based on what I've observed. And when I got into western Wisconsin and hill country, and in Iowa and hill country, where it was low pressure, I saw a lot of movement around it, overhead and underfoot. And I was particularly graphing it at the time, going on like 10-day hunts and graphing all my sightings to the moon and seeing correlations. Even if it was noon, I was seeing more deer than those times. But when I went back home and I hunted the swamps and the heavy pressure, I wasn't seeing it. But I think if it's real here, we should see a difference, at bedding areas, be it 15 minutes. 15 minutes is huge. You got to remember, a lot of the huge bucks that I shoot at bedding areas, like at the staging areas, coming out of bedding, 75 yards from their bed, I'm shooting them at closing time or close to it. So getting them to move 15 minutes earlier is huge. So that is a correlation that I really want to keep track of.
Yeah. Something else that I think is going to be cool is like we can even talk about it on the podcast throughout the season, is like when we have cold front or some type of a weather front come through, just as that week, we can like maybe mention the deer that showed up on your trail cameras, or, if, 4 of the 6 of them had some type of a decent buck on it on some certain day or some certain weather pattern, or I don't know.
What's good about the cell cams is now you can't really go back in there too much with the regular cameras, right? So with the cell cam, you're getting day by day data, and you can watch the weather day to day, and you don't have to go back and go through all the past data and stuff. And then, there's going to be certain things you're going to get a little off or not remember quite right or something. Then, have to go just based on what the weather says, unless you do it day by day. I can watch it day by day and chart it every day, what's coming in on the phone. And then it's not overwhelming at the end of the year either. And it can it'd be fun to, talk about it on the videos. We can have, test site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever, and talk about them week to week, as we do videos,
Yeah.
And then correlate it to the weather during the week. And then at the end of the season, really put all the data together and see where it went.
I've over the years tried to like correlate stuff with trail cameras, and I've never really done it with cell cams like we're doing right now or this year. And it seems like at the end of the year, you're just overloaded with data points, and it's just like you kind of give up on it, because it's like I can't look through 20,000 pictures of
I'm always about trying to gain information from cameras.
Yeah,
that's always my thing. Hunting, I don't really care about the camera too much. To me, hunting's about choosing the right spot for the right reasons, but the data you get out of the cameras is always huge for me.
Yeah.
And the trouble with it is when you run one camera or something and you move it during the season and you do that, move it around, or you run 1 or 2, and then when you're done hunting, you pull your cameras, then you're not getting all that data. So do or die, whether I kill a deer or I don't kill a deer, my goal is to just run these the whole season and monitor them the whole season and get some data out of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make with trail cameras, is constantly checking them. The more you go in there, the more you mess around, the less accurate those data points become, or the less pure they become. So
actually, in a lot of cases, if people misuse trail cameras, they hurt them more than they help them.
100%.
Especially with regular regular trail cams. If they're going in there checking them constantly, and they'll get 1 or 2 big bucks that don't follow the rules and will put up with the scent or whatever, and then they think they're doing everything right, but they're messing up all the other deer. And if that deer knows he's coming in there, he might be coming in when the camera's there, but he's going around and checking to see if the guy is there because he's used to the human scent. You know, he's not catching that deer off guard.
Yeah. We so dating back to 2019, there's a guy in Northwest Pennsylvania that runs 100 plus cameras in that large piece of public there that you guys have hunted.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been collecting these data points, and we just had him in the office last month and went over all 2+ years of running 100 plus cameras, and he put everything in a spreadsheet, camera by. I mean, it was. We haven't released the information yet, but it was crazy. And the long and short of it is, like, you're in Pennsylvania, there's guys in the woods, and there were year over year there were a couple windows that were really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be interesting to hear about.
Yeah, you know, my past using cameras, I've had things catch me off guard like you don't expect. Like I had one spot that I really thought was a good early season spot, and over the years it had a lot of action there. And then I ran a camera there for the whole year for a couple of years. It was at Dave's place, and I started noticing that when I thought it was hot for opening, the opening couple of weeks, in the first 2 years there wasn't a big buck there once. They didn't show up until October, and then when I went back and looked at my kills, my kills were in October. It was just in my head. But watching the cameras, those deer did not show up in that spot until that first and second week of October, and they're gone by rut. There's that 2-week period they were there. And without those cameras, I'd still be chasing that, trying to figure it out. But the camera gave me such a window that you saw every deer for 2 years that went in there. And it was purely random outside of that 2 weeks, 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I used I have a particular spot that if you would set there on like November 3rd and 4th, you probably kill a nice deer every year. It's like every year at this area, there's a nice one that strolls through. It's just a little point that goes out into a cornfield, but it's like clockwork every year. It's just never worked out to where I've been sitting there on the 3rd and 4th, but Stuart here, he said that you can pull historical weather from past years from Weather Underground and import it into an Excel file. I didn't know you could import them to the Excel file. I knew you could go back in the history, but that'd be pretty useful if you're doing this kind of thing. I don't know if Gary's still on. I saw him earlier on here, but he did a pretty good study last year, and we kind of narrowed down. He had quite a few trail cameras in Indiana. I think he included his Wisconsin ones, but there was a couple of days where he had a pretty large number of bucks on that. He just did bucks in general, not necessarily mature bucks, but on a particular day. I can't remember. It coincided with some weather differences and, a time frame, but I cannot remember that. I'd have to ask him what it was, but it was real interesting to see. Yeah. Chad, how many cameras do you have out right now?
Not very many. I would say 20, somewhere between 20 and 25, probably.
That's probably, depending who you ask, not very many.
Yeah, I mean, most of those are left over from
last
few years. Yeah, I mean, there's spots that will run cameras 24/7, 365.
Yeah, it was interesting when I hunted with you. You had cameras. We went to you said, I haven't been here in over a year, and the camera's still running, and you had the solar power on there, and that just that runs and runs and runs, eh?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you get them set up right, there's one cell camera that's been running for 3+ years. I mean, that was one of the very first cell cameras off of production we have down there, and it's still still chugging along. But then you have other cameras. I mean, there's so many variables with signal strength and upload frequencies. I mean, we have other cameras that you put out in 3 months and they're totally toast on the same, the same system. So, yeah.
November 3rd is when Gary said he had the most bucks on camera. It was a bunch of cameras. I mean, maybe 20 or 30. But anyway, here's a pretty good question while we're talking about trail cameras here. Any advantages of putting cameras up high besides keeping people honest?
Well, high is relative, right?
Right.
We practice this theory that we call like the spook proof equation. So all of our cameras, unless we're worried about theft, they're somewhere between like 6 and 8 feet. I don't like to put cameras up any higher than that because you're actually limiting what the camera can do. If you get a camera up, let's say 10 or 12 feet, and it's angled down on a 45, like on a 1-to-1, you just left a 12-foot gap underneath that camera. And also the detection and everything, the detection area and circuit. Yeah, you're monitoring a spot. So it becomes a static, what we call a static environment. So you're monitoring a spot, which is great if you're on a scrape or if maybe you're on a feeder or bait station, mineral pile, whatever. There's places where it's conducive. But I think more often than not, hanging them up, 10 plus feet, I think most of the time guys are hurting themselves. But I understand it because they don't want their stuff stolen. If people can't see it, they can't steal it. So
one problem I've seen with that is it makes the deer antlers look really small.
Yeah.
The tine height, they start looking like they're small racked.
Yeah.
I've been shocked when I see how big a buck is after I seen it from the air and thought it was smaller. Yeah,
not only tines, but just body features. It's like my wife always complains if I'm taking a picture of her on a phone and the phone's not angled a certain way. She's like, "You're making me look big. You need to angle the phone." It's like the same. It's the same thing. Photography tricks.
If you're like monitoring just a scrape or something, though, it's not a huge deal to have them up in the air.
I did something on that in marsh bucks when I released that video way back in the 90s, and everybody said I was nuts. Now everybody's hanging them high.
Yeah, a lot of people do. I've gotten them stolen up high too, though.